Hey guys, Brian Schultz here with the Actually Tiny House Project, where we are exploring smart, simple, sustainable tiny house design and giving you some building tips along the way. Now, today what I want to talk about is how we framed out for the bathroom in our tiny house and just our overall bathroom plan, because just like all tiny house builders, we're trying to keep our interior space as big as possible, which means the bathroom ends up getting kind of crowded. And the overall challenge of tiny house design in general is just trying to make these small spaces feel as big and livable as possible. And I guess an even bigger challenge is trying to do the same thing to the bathroom. So what I want to walk you through here is just some of the countermeasures that we're taking to try to make this small bathroom feel a little more open and a little bit brighter than it actually is. And then also some of the unique framing details that we did to accommodate for the wood-fired solar hot water system that we're going to be putting in this tiny house. All right, so let's start out here just by looking at the overall setup. What you're looking at here is the rear of the tiny house. The bathroom is framed 32 inches off the rear wall. The ceiling is coming across at 7 feet and then is dipping down to 6 feet over here. Now, what that little dip in the corner is for is to accommodate for our 28-gallon Lowboy water heater. And the reason we need such a big water heater and the reason we need it in that location is because it's part of a hybrid wood-fired and solar hot water system we're putting in, where we're going to have a water-jacketed stovepipe right here and a solar hot water panel out there, and the hot water from those is just going to naturally rise up to be stored in that tank. And this is a small version of a bigger system that I lived with off the grid for 10 years. It functioned fantastically. It required almost no electrical input. So I'm really excited to try that out in a tiny house context, and you're going to have to watch future videos for updates on that. All right, so before I dive into all the construction details, I just want to talk a little bit more about the overall strategy for making this tiny bathroom feel a little bit bigger than it is. We're trying to focus here on 4 principles: bright shower stall, bright walls, bright windows, and a ceiling height that feels proportionate. So starting out with the shower stall, we decided to put a fiberglass shower stall in this tiny house, which is not something that I would have expected considering how much I normally like to build everything myself. A fiberglass shower stall feels just kind of mass-produced for my taste. But after visiting a bunch of tiny houses, the only tiny house bathroom that really felt spacious to us was the one with the fiberglass shower stall. And I think the reason that is because the bright interior of it reflects light into the rest of the bathroom. And also, it not having any hard defined edges kind of tricks your brain into not really knowing how big the space is. So it feels a little bit bigger than it is. So if you put a good quality fiberglass shower stall in, it's going to be easy to install and it's going to last a long time. We decided to go with a little more of a budget option here, and we really regretted this because the install process alone was really frustrating. So that's our shower stall in here. Now for the windows, we've got a window in the back of the tiny house right here. And we also have a sliding door that fits in here that's going to have a big window in the front that's going to be covered with privacy film. And what this does is it lets light from the tiny house into the bathroom, and also light from outside come through the bathroom and into the tiny house. So it's just a really good solution to keep this whole area from feeling darker than you want it to. Now, for the paint on the inside of the walls, what we're going with for the interior of the entire tiny house is just going to be a really bright kind of off natural white. So the whole thing is reflecting lots of light, feeling nice and spacious on the inside. And finally, the roof here is sitting at 7 feet. And 7 feet is a little bit higher than you normally see in tiny houses where you've got a loft up above, because you really need every bit of inches for that space to be big enough upstairs. But if you're in a situation where we are, where we're not having a loft and we don't have to worry about that, then going up to 7 feet helps this space to feel a little bit bigger. Now, you might ask, why not just go all the way up to the roof? Now, you certainly can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But when you go too tall on a space, you run into an opposite effect where it ends up feeling really skinny. And that also can make a space feel small, which is a principle that we incorporated into this entire house, where we were trying to keep things not just big, but proportionate so they actually feel big. All right, so moving on to the framing details here, what you're looking at is just a standard 2x4 wall with a piece of 3/4 inch Russian birch ply on top of it that is spanning across to the side walls and to the rear walls. It's sitting on top of some 1.25 inch wide by 3 inch tall Douglas fir cleats that are screwed onto the framing with some really heavy duty screws. And the reason I like going with this plywood in this application is because it creates the lowest profile bathroom roof possible. So I have the maximum amount of space above the toilet, but I still have plenty of space to put this water heater in up here. Another reason that a plywood roof like this is really nice is because it's already a finished surface. By going with a really high quality plywood, not only is this a really strong, stiff piece of wood, but it's also just really easy to paint or clear coat when you're done, so you don't have a bunch of extra steps of having to add paneling or sheetrock to the inside of it. Now, one thing I had to do with this particular piece of wood, because there is going to be a heavy water heater up here, is I needed to support the front of this with a piece of angle iron, because if I used regular wood, it would have created a ledge which would have restricted the entrance into the toilet right here and just would have been a little bit lower than we wanted. So I came up with this way to kind of let this piece of angle iron into this corner right here. It spans right across onto the cleat back here, and once I paint all this, it's going to be virtually invisible, but still strong enough to take a lot of weight. All right, so moving sideways here, we go ahead and bump up to the 7-foot tall portion of the bathroom here, which is set up just the same way as the lower portion. It's just a piece of 3/4 inch birch ply that's landing on top of some cleats that are screwed into the perimeter of the wall there. And the only difference here is that I had to bump up to a little bit of a thicker top plate here because this entire span is a pocket door, which means that even though you get a little bit of support from these split steel studs here, this is basically unsupported. And in our case, it doesn't need that much support because this is just a storage loft, but we did need to go a little bit thicker than our standard 2x4. I went a full dimension 2x4 old growth Douglas fir on this, and it seems to be stiff enough to where it doesn't deflect even if you put a bunch of weight up there. Now, I do want to take a minute here just to talk about this split steel stud pocket door system here, because this was something that came highly recommended to me that I absolutely hate and would never do again. So what you're looking at here is just kind of a standard track system for a pocket door up above. I love the track that came with this, but this whole split steel stud system here was a huge pain in the butt. The instructions were terrible, and I don't like that it has so little purchase for being able to attach your interior cladding here, whether that's sheetrock or paneling or anything else. To do it again, I would ditch this whole system and just go with a standard pocket door arrangement where you have a track up top and then you have plywood on either side of it, because not only is that going to be cheaper than something like this, but it's also going to give you better attachment for anything that you're going to put on the outside. Or if you decide to use really high quality plywood, you could just go ahead and paint that surface, which is the choice that I would go for if I was going to do this again. The one thing I do want to say is that if you're going to put a pocket door in any house, spend the money to get a high quality track, because low quality pocket door tracks will frustrate you for the life of your house. And there's nothing more annoying than every single day being reminded that you didn't spend an extra 20 bucks to get a nicer piece of hardware. So, all right, so last thing I want to talk about here is the electrical and the lighting and the ventilation. For the ventilation here, we're going to be using this Panasonic Whisper Green Select fan. These are super popular with tiny house builders because they're energy efficient and they're quiet, and they come with a couple different control modules that you can purchase separately. The control module that we decided to get was the one that allows this to run at a continuous low flow just for general house ventilation, but then bumps up to a higher flow whenever you're in the bathroom. And this fan is going to be, at least in the beginning here, a dual purpose. We're going to try to use this not just for bathroom ventilation, but to see if it works okay as ventilation for like cooking and things like that, because it's nice if you don't have to install a separate fan. But we did run an extra wire for that if we do decide to put in a second exhaust fan up at the peak. Now, another thing that's important with bathroom ventilation and also just house ventilation in general is to get a moisture sensing switch here. And you can get a control module that does that for this, but it doesn't get very good reviews. So we're going to get a separate moisture sensing switch for this fan that just goes into the wall here, and then anytime the humidity in the tiny house rises above a certain level, like at night while you're sleeping, it will just turn itself on and then it'll bring the moisture back down, which is important because tiny houses can build up vapor pretty quickly. Now for the lighting in here, we're just going to go ahead and start with the light that you can get installed into this. And that's what's so nice about this unit, is that you can get it in lots of different configurations. The one we have is going to have a light that comes on automatically that's integrated with the cover. It's a nice 3000 Kelvin light, which is a good color temperature for a bathroom. And if that's not enough light, we'll just run a separate wire run and put another light up here as well. Now, something you might notice about this if you watch my plumbing video as well is that we don't have a sink in the bathroom. We decided that putting a tiny sink in a tiny house bathroom is probably more frustration than it's worth in a house this size. So if somebody wants to brush their teeth, they can just step outside here and just use the main sink, which is going to be located right here for that. There is going to be a little electrical outlet in here, so you can plug in a shaver or whatever you need to do in here. And that is pretty much the whole tiny house bathroom here. So thanks for watching this video. If you have any more questions or any comments, make sure you leave that in the comment section down below. I try to respond as much as I can. And if you want to follow more of what we do, make sure you check out our website, which is actuallytiny.com, where we've got lots of great tiny house resources, including a lot more videos just like this one. You can also follow us on Instagram. We are at actuallytiny, where we're posting daily updates of this entire build, including time-lapse videos of everything we're doing here, including framing this shower. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you next time.